Imagine if the genetic code for every living thing on Earth was all stored in one giant public library. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But it's totally real, and it's thanks in large part to the vision of one man, Walter Goad. So today, we're going to dive into the story of how his idea for a DNA database called GenBank completely changed the world of biology. So let's just think about this for a second. What if you could look up the genetic blueprint for anything, a tiny virus, a massive blue whale, as easily as you check a book out of the library? That's the simple but incredibly powerful question that started it all. And as we'll see, it changed everything. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the data explosion that created a huge problem. Then, we'll meet the visionary himself, Walter Goad. After that, we'll see how his library was actually built, how it went from a small project to a global phenomenon, and finally, we'll talk about the absolutely incredible legacy he left behind. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're heading back to the early 1980s. Science is just on the edge of this massive biotech revolution, but it's about to hit a huge, huge wall, a data problem. You see, scientists were getting unbelievably good at sequencing DNA. That's just the fancy term for reading the order of those A, T, C, and Gs that make up an organism's code. The problem was, all of this amazing, groundbreaking data was getting completely trapped. It was stuck in individual lab notebooks, on local computers, totally isolated. Yeah, this is what's known as a data silo. Just imagine every single biologist in the world discovering a new sentence in the book of life, but then just writing it down in their own private diary and putting it in a drawer. Nobody could compare notes, nobody could search for patterns. You just can't do big science that way. The entire field was grinding to a halt. And right in the middle of this growing crisis of locked-up data, well, that's when our central figure comes into the picture, a guy named Walter Goad, who saw not just a mess, but a massive opportunity. Now, what's so fascinating here is that Goad, he wasn't a biologist. He was a theoretical physicist working at Los Alamos National Lab. And because he came from a different world, he had this totally unique perspective. He didn't just see a bunch of biological letters, he saw information. He saw data that needed to be organized, stored, and, this is the key part, searched. And this quote right here, this really gets to the heart of his radical idea. You have to remember, this was way before things like open source or open science were even a thing. In a super competitive academic world, Gould was basically saying that the most fundamental data about life itself shouldn't be anyone's private property. No, it should be a public resource for everyone, a truly revolutionary thought for the time. So, armed with this powerful philosophy, Goad and his team set out to build something that had never, ever existed before, a public library for DNA. So check out how this all went down. The idea really started coming together in the early 80s. And then, boom, by 1982, GenBank was officially launched. This was a huge moment. For the very first time, scientists had one central place they could go to both deposit and access genetic sequences. And it didn't take long for other folks around the world to realize what a game changer this was. And you gotta love this, because it really shows you just how new all of this was. When GenBank first went live, it held just over 600 sequences. That's it. It was such a tiny, humble start for what would become one of the most important scientific tools on the planet. Go ahead and burn that number into your brain, 600. All right, so how did we get from that little project with just 600 sequences to the absolute global powerhouse it is today? Remember that number I told you to remember, 600? Well, from 600 sequences at launch, GenBank and its partners now hold billions, with a B. The growth has been nothing short of explosive. It's just an incredible testament to the power of Guan's original vision. The little library he started now holds an almost unbelievable amount of our planet's biological data. And of course, GenBank didn't do this all by itself. Goad's idea was really the spark for something even bigger, the International Nucleotide Sequence Database collaboration. As you can see, this created a partnership linking GenBank in the Americas with other huge databases in Europe and Japan. The best part? Now, if a scientist submits a sequence to one, it automatically gets shared across all three every single day. It's the perfect realization of Goad's shared resource idea. So, what's the big deal? What did building this library actually make possible? Well, what is Walter Goad's true legacy? The short answer is pretty much all of modern genomics. I mean, the list of things GenBank made possible is just staggering. The entire Human Genome Project couldn't have happened without it. It was the public library for all of that data. It fueled the creation of search tools like BLAST, which is kind of like a search engine for DNA that scientists use constantly. From tracking viruses like COVID-19 in real time to developing personalized medicines that are saving lives, it all runs on the data infrastructure that Walter Goad pioneered. Walter Goad passed away back in the year 2000, but his contribution, his legacy, is anything but gone. It's not just a database, it's a fundamental change in how we do science. It's alive and well in every single lab in every country that studies the code of life. And that kind of leaves us with one last big question, right? Walter Goad saw a huge data problem and built the library that science desperately needed. So when you look at the challenges we're facing today, in climate science, in AI, in public health, what's the next great library that we need to build? What's the next GenBank?